New episodes of the I Know You Didn't Ask podcast are out every Monday and Friday, available wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is all about the two crypto nutjob millionaires who kidnapped and tortured a fellow crypto millionaire who is from Italy. Ciao, what's Gucci, Italy? Shout out to 50% of my heritage. And these two crypto psychos ended up keeping this Italian millionaire hostage in their SoHo townhouse for 17 days back in May of this year. So this entire saga is all about entitled millionaires, power, drug abuse, control, physical assault, torture. Did I mention drug use? Incel culture. Of course, there's a chainsaw involved, and the list truly goes on. There is a little bit of something for everybody here. So this show is very much not for children's ears. There's horrific things that happen here. And again, why I'm so excited, why I'm so titillated about this, I don't know, but we'll get very, very deep into it. Don't you worry. So what got me into the story in general was that Charlie Zakkour from Bravo's Next Gen NYC was buddies with the two kidnappers and were all, besties, and we're all partying it up in their SoHo townhouse. So Charlie was literally caught on camera hanging around the townhouse while one of them was being arrested the day that the Italian man fled the torture house. Charlie was kind of the plug to hot girls who worked at Brandy Melville around the corner from the townhouse, and allegedly he was also helping the guys get access to mountains of cocaine. So more to come on Charlie, don't you worry. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this absolute fucking shit show. So the reporting that I am basing my episode on are from New York Magazine. The Cut had a bunch of articles on it. The New York Times had a bunch of articles, tons of local news sources, The Post. Of course, there's a shit ton of information on Reddit, local articles, TikToks. So there's a lot of information here that is coming from a lot of different sources. And so let's just level set quickly. This story is based around cryptocurrency. And so cryptocurrency is just a form of digital money that operates on a decentralized network, which uses blockchain technology instead of traditional banks. Again, like lots of question marks there. We don't really need to know the intricacies of cryptocurrency to understand what the fuck is going on here. So, because this is a largely unregulated form of money, it's highly volatile, prone to scam and scammers, and it really offers little protection if your funds are lost or stolen. So you're probably getting my gist here of where this is going to go. So generally, digital money or Bitcoin or cryptocurrency are kept in virtual wallets or in quote unquote cold wallets, which are a physical device that's not connected to the internet that houses all of your crypto. And so most of the sophisticated investors in crypto will have these cold wallet devices. This is very much what all the guys in this story have been using. They have net worths of over $30 million, $100 million from crypto trading. So basically, if somebody has access to your virtual wallet's password, then they can basically transfer all of your funds to their account very easily. And because this is not regulated, you can easily transfer funds without any bank's oversight or a bank asking any questions like, why the fuck is somebody sending, $72 million from one account to another account? This is why some of these crypto millionaires have been targeted for kidnapping, because their wealth is really liquid, it's not traceable, and can easily be transferred. And the crazy thing about crypto itself is that these transfers can be forced onto somebody on the spot in a moment of duress and are also basically impossible to reverse or recover. So this industry is very much built on attracting sketchy people with bad intentions. This crypto kidnapping has been the first time it's been reported to happen in New York. However, it's been happening a lot in Europe. They've had 33 reported crypto hostage situations on record, so God knows what's happening off the record. So there is a lot going on here. First, we're going to discuss the crypto kidnappers and who they are, and then we'll talk about how they met, and then we'll find out more information on how they ended up meeting Michael, who was a 28-year-old crypto trader who they ended up kidnapping for 17 days. And just to kind of level set here, but like to quote Kendrick Lamar, shit is going to get crazy, scary, spooky, and hilarious. And hilarious is generous. So let's first start off with William Duplessie. Question mark if I'm saying his last name right, don't care. He is a rich boy. He's tall, white, blonde. He basically looks like a younger version of the Gilgo Beach Killer, which, to be honest, is looking like William's future in general. So he grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, son of a rich kid, divorced parents, 4 kids in the house. He grew up in a house that's now selling for $12.2 million, so very relatable and affordable. His dad was an investment banker. His mom was a social worker. He was always supposedly a bad kid. In high school, he stabbed a drug dealer before graduating high school. And because of this, his dad actually ended up sending him off to China to work in a bicycle factory. And I guess he was working in this factory covered in soot all day and then would come home to the 5-star hotel that his parents put him up in. And I, to be honest, don't think that this changed his behavior at all. I don't understand why the dad was like, let's send him to China, when he could have just sent him to like a therapeutic boarding school and like he could just like play in the woods like lots of other problem children in America. China does seem a little aggressive. Can imagine that probably didn't do any good for Will. And we're only going to just find out about more and more horrific things about this kid and his life. He ended up graduating high school. He ended up going to Bard College, which is up in Westchester, New York. He was roomies with Peter Brand Jr., who is the son of a famous art collector and model Stephanie Seymour. And Peter Brand Jr. is very much in the socialite world. He hangs out with a lot of the people that Charlie hangs out with and are just kind of basically like the real version of Gossip Girl for kind of my millennial generation. And his brother actually was Harry Brandt, who died a couple years ago due to an overdose of drugs at age 24, which is pretty devastating. Peter, who was Will's roommate, has been looking pretty down and out lately too, but he's also friends with Misha Barton right now, so he's very much like in a socialite scene. And so Peter was Will's roommate at Bard. Supposedly they were besties. And Peter will come up later in the story as well. In college, a bunch of people kind of talked about him as being unliked. People would go to his parties. And of course, he's the rich kid, so he'd buy a ton of liquor for everybody, and then they would all party. So no surprise here that he probably was a douchebag back then too, but people said, we'll disregard the fact that you're a total douche because you keep buying us things. Thanks, rich kid. He was a DJ at one point under the alias William the Conqueror, and he tried to get gigs at Webster Hall, but no luck. Supposedly, he also took a lit cigarette and held it on his tongue for so long that you can actually smell burnt fucking flesh. That's absolutely terrifying. I don't want to hang out with somebody who is actively doing that, but it seems like this kid is consistently acting out and desperate for attention. Ultimately, I think that is, the end all be all for this man. He wants attention, and you know what? His parents are divorced, and his dad seems like a douchebag, which we'll get to him. So he probably has just been wanting attention from his family, his parents, and he wants love, but no one can ever give it to him because he's completely unlovable and a selfish douchebag. Again, we'll get there. So, of course, he doesn't last long at Bard. He ends up transferring to Tulane, which is pretty much the biggest party school in the country. That's kind of where a guy I know knew him. At this time, he was deeply getting into drugs and alcohol. He actually got mixed up in a local gang scene and apparently agreed to sell $5,000 worth of coke to, I guess, people at Tulane. And he ended up just like snorting it all himself. And I'm just like confused. Like, bro, you don't get high on your own supply. That's kind of the whole point of this. But it seems like he just wanted to buy cocaine at wholesale pricing. Like $5,000 that he purchased probably could have sold for like $12,000, making a $7,000 profit, but instead he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy $5,000 wholesale, snort it all myself, and keep it moving. He also at this time became an obsessive gun collector. He said, quote, I'm known as Wild Bill and I'm feared in New Orleans. Nobody's scared of you. People said back then that he always had drugs, he always had girls around him, but he never had money on him. And I found that to be really interesting because I think that was a critique on Charlie that we saw on Next Gen NYC, where he was stiffing people with the bill. And it kind of seemed shocking considering he has $1,000 a month investment from daddy, as well as likely doesn't pay his own rent or again, like a mortgage. God knows Charlie's dad could just be like, okay, whatever, just buy the house. And I gotta say, Anwar cannot be thrilled with Charlie being involved in all of this nonsense. So during his Tulane times, he was spending tons and tons of money, and friends were saying that he was spending tons on drugs, cigars, strippers, Italian suits, and hundreds of dollars worth of Jonathan Adler coasters. And that's one thing I really did enjoy about Will. I think he's like, you know what, I'm a narcissistic, raging psychopath, but I can protect my wood tables at all costs. Like, that is something I'm not willing to budge on. And I support that for him. And his tacky ass was getting like those Jonathan Adler coasters that had like the pills on them and like alcohol bottles on them, very, provocative coasters. So at this point, he ends up moving to California where his dad is living. His dad gets him a job working where he's obviously not qualified for this role, but he's making about $100,000. Quickly after being hired, he's fired. No surprise there. Let's be real. And at this point, he's living in California and his dad is also out there as well. His dad's business is doing pretty poorly. So now they're looking to team up and do something together. And they end up starting their own company called Pangea, which is an investment firm for cryptocurrency token startups. So, fast forward a year or so, they're not getting a lot of traction here in America. And the two of those fucking losers resettle in Switzerland together to try and sell Pangea to international investors all over the world. Because Will's dad, James, was a somewhat trustworthy person in the finance industry, people started actually investing with them, and they ended up raising about $22 million during a short period of time. And then, of course, we have the pandemic hit a year and a half later, whatever, and they both left Switzerland during this time. And they leave Switzerland, and then the investors start getting confused and begin to question what's going on with these investments that they haven't seen any updates for. And, no surprise there that these two are hoodwinking investors. So from Switzerland, they left during the pandemic, and then they end up moving to Miami. And Will, of course, is continuing to be super reckless. This behavior doesn't change wherever you're living in the world at that time. He was renting multiple houses and not paying rent on them. He had a suspended license, but also was renting Porsches and crashing them. One of the landlords of one of the apartments he was renting said he completely trashed the place and that he found him overdosed one night. So just again, all in all, not good. I'm setting the stage here, people, for just worse behavior. So at this point, he is still living in Miami and he decides to move back to Switzerland. And during this stint in Switzerland, there's not much information on what he's doing and what he's up to, but he finds himself in jail for almost a year and a half for domestic violence towards his girlfriend at the time. Fortunately, couldn't find much information about what happened during this time. But again, this is not surprising based on past behavior. If he's willing to beat up other people, then it's likely that he's going to be willing to beat up his partner. Nobody is spared from this man's psychosis and abusive behaviors. So I know there's whiplash here, but after his little jail sentence in Switzerland, he moves back to Miami in 2024. Okay, so we're getting closer, people. I'm telling you, we're getting closer to him meeting his new bestie. So while he's in Miami, he is still knee-deep in crypto and is obviously networking with other crypto people. While he's living in Miami, Will ends up meeting John. And so John is our second crypto psycho. And John is from Smithland, Kentucky. He is a cybersecurity obsessed dude, and he mined Bitcoin and ended up making over $100 million in a short period of time. He's in his mid to late 30s, and he really made his money while he was living in San Francisco, but ended up moving back to Kentucky when he had made all his money. And to be quite honest with you, I'm pretty upset because I too am marrying somebody in cybersecurity, and I just have to start wondering, I'm sorry, why are we not mining Bitcoin? I don't know what that means, and I don't know what that entails, but I really do feel like Matt's gonna have to start learning how to mine Bitcoin. Again, I don't want to turn into this horrific situation. I don't want our life to unfold like this, but I would at least 2 million in crypto. That would be nice. I don't need 100 million. We don't need to make a fortune, but I really feel we need to start milking the cybersecurity specialty a little bit more. So John himself actually had been online for a while and had this online reputation as being kind of a good guy hacker who was able to really help identify vulnerabilities in other people's crypto portfolios. And strangers would actually end up reaching out to him for help when it came to monitoring and securing their crypto fortunes, as well as just understanding, I guess, what crypto to buy and when. I don't really understand the intricacies there, and I just do not care to know. And so back in 2020, again, 4 years prior to John and Will becoming besties, in 2020, Michael Cartaran, who I'm just going to call Michael, who is the Italian 28-year-old man who ended up being kidnapped by them for 17 days here in New York. That's when Michael and John started working together because Michael was actually reaching out to him, not really as a business partner per se, but more as a role model and protector in this industry. So there was a lot of trust between the two of them. And back in 2021, Will's company Pangea actually invested in Michael's cryptocurrency project. And so through this crypto world is how John and Will ended up meeting Michael, who eventually, would become their prisoner. So fast forward, Will is now living in John's absolutely tacky, hideous $1.5 million home in Kentucky, and it's about 10,000 square feet. It's the largest home in that town. I did see some photos of this house online that are bone chilling, but I really wanted to just point out one specific thing. And of course, I will be posting this on Megan the Podcaster's Instagram because the photo is just absolutely shocking, gobsmacking. The master bathroom. First and foremost, it's completely massive. It's probably larger than my one-bedroom apartment that I'm living in currently. 2, it is fully carpeted in white rugs. And the rugs did look clean. I will give it that, but there can only be so clean that you can make a rug in a bathroom. And third, and the most offensive of all, was that there was a purple in-ground tub in the middle of the room. And like the edge of the tub was touching the white carpet. So it was just an absolute travesty. This will be on the Instagram. Again, there are really heinous things happening in this episode, but there, of course, are certain things that I particularly take umbrage with. This being one of them, and then we'll get to another one when we start talking about the New York City townhouse that they ended up living in as well. This ended up being John's home that he purchased, but Will was living in there with him. And so when they ended up purchasing this house, they showed up to collect the keys, and both of the guys and their posses were all dressed up in full body armor. Like, bro, you're literally just signing over some paperwork and getting the keys to your new house. They are driving a camouflage apocalypse Hellfire, which let's just like see what that is. Retailing for like between $170,000 and $250,000 for this hideous military vehicle. Again, you're just in rural Kentucky. Nobody's after you, but okay, you got your full body armor, you got your camouflage military truck. They were all carrying guns, and then they all just had like lots of security guards around them. The realtor must have been like, okay, well, I think you guys are safe here. It's a massive property. I wouldn't really worry. I don't know if you really need full body armor. You are not in Iran right now. You're in Kentucky. You're good. So what the fuck was going on in that house was very bizarre. A lot of murky information. We have some information from John's girlfriend at the time, who ended up obviously not having favorable things to say about them. And the things that she expressed about them and that other people will say about them is just like that these guys were like basically insane paranoid crackheads. Like, nothing to see here, don't worry, our outfits, behavior, cars reflect they don't reflect any nefarious business that we might be up to. Like, no, all's good here, don't worry. And we'll keep getting that kind of testimony from a lot of various people who spoke to all of these various sources. So John's girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend I should say, spoke to New York Magazine and said he was threatening to shoot her at one point. He grabbed her by the throat and put a gun to her head, screaming that he was going to kill her, and that he had dug a hole to bury her in. At one point, Joel and Will locked her in the bedroom and took her phone and refused to allow her to leave the bedroom for several hours. She wasn't let out until the next morning, and by then, unfortunately, a snowstorm had set in, which trapped her in the house with both of the men for another week. At that point, the weather had cleared, and they all had gone out for Chinese food. Will lashed out, asking her why she'd taken them to that, quote, chink restaurant with spies. Again, his words, not mine. And he said, quote, you should have cooked me dinner and sucked my dick. And the next day, obviously, this girl said, deuces, boys. And she ended up checking herself into a rehab center in Arizona and now has a restraining order on John. I'm glad she got help. I'm glad she's safe. And again, she had to go into a rehab center herself. There's so much drugs being used throughout this entire situation, and we'll find out more of that information again as we go along in this here episode. So, of course, these cokeheads have lots of business ideas. And if anybody's ever done coke, that's when you get the brilliant, never before done business ideas in your brain. Oh my God. So the guys decided to start a new company together, and their plan was to buy land and distressed assets in Kentucky. To do this, they ended up hiring this guy named Scott Hernandez, who was a real estate investor who formerly worked with Jeb Bush, of course. And Scott Hernandez himself was the son of a wealthy Republican. Of course, Will wanted to run as a senator, to run in competition with Mitch McConnell for his Senate seat. Lol. Supposedly, this Scott guy ended up brokering a meeting between Will and the campaign manager for Nikki Haley's presidential run. And so all these motherfucking people are morons. Again, let's not fall for these fucking MAGA morons. Let's think critically for a second. Look at who these fucking people are all linked with. Savages, stupid, narcissistic, money-hungry, insecure, incel losers. Anyways, in addition to making these companies, these two little butt buddies made a joint manifesto, of course. Plan as they laid it out was to steal foreigners' cryptocurrency through an intelligence operation. The document included a list of targets. They would plan to slowly gain trust over a long period of time while also investigating these foreign targets, discovering their intents and networks, as well as any other valuables that they may have. When the iron is hot, they will strike. We will take Bitcoin and crypto from evil people. This agency will actively purge America of its bad foreign powerhouses. Crypto keeps them alive because it's off the grid. It's our belief that these people need to lose their coin. They mentioned a few targets, one being a German-born CEO of a security company, and another being Michael, their Italian business partner and friend at the time, who is, our victim of the kidnapping in this story. So before Michael, there was also a little bit of inklings that there was also somebody else who had been kidnapped by them. So basically a random stranger called the cops from a Holiday Inn, and the front desk clerk ended up calling the cops to say that an older woman with a German accent had received an alarming text from her son, who was at the house with Will and John. The mom ended up saying that he had gone to spend time with his buddies, but was being held ransom for some reason, and that they weren't letting him leave until his mom sent him half of his cryptocurrency. So, to be quite honest with you, the way that these guys are behaving now is basically just the 2025 digital version of going into your local bank with guns and a big sack to put on all your stolen money. So they are just basically modern day bank robbers in a completely unregulated world. So as I mentioned up front, this is what these unregulated digital markets and currencies allow for people to do. And of course, we're seeing lots of various coercion tactics to get these crypto people to give up their passwords and their virtual wallets to these fucking scam artists. This is crazy. I barely have any freaking stocks, let alone crypto, but all of this shit is just crazy. So the boys ended up taking a little vacay. They just need a little bit of sun, you guys. They need to get some sun, get some rays. We find out that they go to Palm Beach, which I'm sorry, nothing good happens in fucking Palm Beach. That is where Luann was arrested and married. Tinsley Mortimer's arrest happened there. Mar-a-Lago motherfucking exists, as well as Jeffrey Epstein's, pervert palace is also in fucking Palm Beach. So these two fucking morons show up in a private jet to Palm Beach and meet up again with Peter Brandt, the guy I mentioned earlier in the episode, who's also a rich asshole kid who will also be brought up a third time on this episode as well in a very funny way. So just watch this space. But Peter Brandt ended up being able to help Will set up a dinner with some few wealthy friends, one of whom had recently launched a business, and Will was expressing possibly investing in said business. So, they kiki at dinner, they have a good time, and I guess they all suggest that they fly back to the mansion in Kentucky so they could talk biz. As you know, these are all just freaking business moguls. We need Will and John on Shark Tank. So basically, the guys were starting to show really strange signs of being psychos on this private flight to Kentucky. He was saying that he'd been a participant in MK Ultra, which was the secret military experiment on psychedelics that literally ended decades before he was born. He also said he was a CIA operative. He talks about this quote-unquote German terrorist that they encountered on their property, and they kept him supposedly at their house for about 6 weeks, and they took all his crypto to defend the front lines of America, and they quote-unquote got rid of him. How annoying would it be to be near these coked out morons in army fatigues when these guys have literally done nothing honorable or difficult in their entire lives? They're just fucking incels with computers. But all of the Palm Beach people are what the fuck is going on? And when they arrive at the house, they're all given their army fatigues just in case. And supposedly Will and John had all these people around them, and they were sitting around their big dinner table with typewriters, typewriting messages to each other, and then lighting them on fire because they were so paranoid of people finding out what they were saying, and they were then starting to think that these people from Palm Beach were actually working for the CIA. Again, paranoid, schizophrenic energy all throughout this entire story. So then we have John. Throughout that time that the people were there, John and Will ended up wandering around the house. They had pistols on them at all times. They wore AR-15s with 100 rounds of bullets fully loaded, no safety on, just around the house. He's like, ooh, I'm going to get a spoonful of peanut butter, but let me just move my gun out of the way so I can easily access it. These guys are such freaks, and I shouldn't even say that they'd be eating peanut butter because if they're so yacked out, they're not eating anything. And then soon after the Palm Beach people went to their house, we have a quick plot twist for these two besties. A few weeks later, the two of them move into a 38 Prince Street, which is an 8-bedroom townhouse in Manhattan. It's ranging from $30,000 to $75,000 a month to rent. This house has an elevator, multiple floors. They ended up turning the basement into a full like nightclub with a professional DJ setup and sound system. There's a La Cornue range stove that can literally cost about $20,000. And unfortunately for, us poor people who would like love to cook on like an incredible stove, these people obviously never cook. They would supposedly order $1,500 to $2,000 in food every day from the city's best restaurants. They'd get food from Nobu, Cipriani, Blue Ribbon, anything. There was one person who visited the house who said, there was one time I came in and it was the funniest thing. They had $600 of Blue Ribbon sushi sitting outside that nobody even got to eat because they forgot they ordered it. You guys, I hate rich people. I hate these fucking douchebag rich people who are wasteful. I mean, they do a lot of horrific things, but like wasting gorgeous Blue Ribbon sushi. Beautiful fish had to die for your ungrateful asses. It's absolutely disgusting. I will say one random thing about their 38 Prince Street townhouse is that this area is right across the street from this like beautiful brick facade that encloses a church. Again, very holy behavior happening here. But this is just a pro tip for anybody going to New York. But that one strip right outside 38 Prince has the best street vendors. They're always selling like affordable sunglasses and like gold plated, silver plated jewelry. But it's just a great little shopping street. So the more you know, I'm actually going into the city on Sunday for a little shopping, so I might actually actively pass by 38 Prince Street just for my research. You guys know me. You know me. So basically, this gorgeous multi-floor townhouse was turned into kind of like a crypto incel frat house. And there had been piles of cocaine all over the place, all on gorgeous silver Tiffany trays. Peter Brandt's little bitch ass was consulted to curate a selection of contemporary art and furniture. What the hell does he know? And they're all such fucking losers. Supposedly, John and Will would roam around the house in night vision goggles, showing off their loaded guns, as well as holding small chainsaws that they just conveniently kept in the house, just in case they need a chainsaw. And again, they're taking a page out of Elon Musk's ketamine-filled book. I hate all of these men. I hate these men. These are literally the men who are trying to strip women from our rights. It's sick. It's awesome. Supposedly, Will was the party guy, and John wasn't really crazy for it. He said he'd prefer to retreat to his room on the 4th floor and sit on the computer, chain smoke Marlboros, and blast dubstep. Bro, you're 37. You're a fucking loser. He, I guess, would complain that he didn't like New York, he didn't like nightclubs, and he didn't like the Louis Vuitton pajamas that Will made him wear. Well, I don't like my $2,000 pajamas. Fucking pussy. Supposedly, John just wanted to settle down in the countryside and have a family. You guys, he's just like us. He doesn't want to accidentally take a chainsaw to his captor's leg. He just wants to settle down in the countryside. You have $100 million. Go fucking settle in the countryside, you motherfucker. You don't need to be engaging in this. Again, if I was like $1 million in the bank, from my lips to God's ears, but if I had $1 million, like you would never even hear from me. $1 million in the grand scheme of society we live in today, like isn't a lot of money. But like you'd never hear from me. And you'd never hear that I was like abusing an Italian tourist in my fucking basement. So, okay, we have the guys living in the frat house, good times, lots of parties were happening there. And so Will and John ended up having a joint assistant named Morgan O'Connor, who was a well-connected club rat in Manhattan. He's a former model, and he was known for his, quote, striking look because he was a white boy with waist-length dreadlocks. And I mean, just from my personal experience, any white person with dreadlocks is an absolute fucking moron. They cannot be trusted. Morgan O'Connor knew every bottle girl in the city, and that's who brought in Charlie from Next Gen NYC into the mix. And so Charlie and Morgan O'Connor, who is a guy, I didn't know if I mentioned that, but they grew up together on Manhattan in the party circuit. They supposedly both dated Lindsay Lohan as teenagers. And the two of them were really tasked to help find young women to party with Will and John. And I think we kind of see that on Next Gen NYC. We always were wondering, like, wow, Charlie keeps hanging out with all these young people. It's weird. Like, he doesn't have any friends his own age. And supposedly Charlie's kind of job was to basically help stock the parties at the 38th Prince Street townhouse with hot girls. And there is a Brandy Melville store right around the corner from there. And supposedly that's where Charlie would go to, I guess, kind of recruit women to then party with them. And Charlie supposedly had dated a bunch of these girls over the years and oftentimes brought the girl as well as their friends to clubs, as well as just like after hours parties at the townhouse. And supposedly Charlie would just like hang out at the Brandy Melville store, and some of the young employees were like, what is Unc doing at Brandy Melville? And Unc, because they call him Uncle because he's such an old friggin' man. Granted, the kid's like 29, but like to these like 19-year-old girls, there's like, what's this old dude doing here again? Like, it's not like he's buying like cheap t-shirts made from China for anybody. Like, what's going on? Why is this man here? Charlie, I actually ended up doing a little bit more research on and tried to find really anything, but it's hard to find things about his past. But one thing I found interesting was on the Bravo TV bio section for the new Next Gen cast, it says Charlie's a crypto trader and private investor who's been ruling NYC's club scene since he was 14. And he knows everyone, parentheses, and their secrets. So I want to know more about these secrets that Charlie knows. Clearly, he's up to no good. As I mentioned, Anwar is not thrilled. He said, how could you do this to me, question mark. I don't know if actually Charlie will be on the next season of Next Gen at this rate. So as we know, Charlie can always get everybody into the hot spots. Of course, he was using his pull to get John and Will into the box. The most infamous erotic club in Manhattan that everybody's going to. They would also go to Jeans, Pulse Casablancas, and I know I've aged out of partying in New York City, and I don't even know the name of these bars. R.I.P. to my youth. They would supposedly spend six figures in one evening. They'd arrive with security. And of course, they would have, bulletproof vests with military patches on it, bear fur vests, their monogrammed matching Louis Vuitton pajama sets. Again, these are two fucking butt buddies. And they would come with empty gun holders just to, get the people going, get the people talking. So throughout their time in New York, they were kind of being a little shady towards new recruits and people who they were possibly trying to work with. Supposedly, they went out with a new recruit over a $10,000 dinner at Raoul's, which Raoul's is a fabulous restaurant in SoHo. You cannot get a fucking seat there anymore. It used to be like my old stomping grounds like 7 years ago before it became super fucking popular. They're known for their, I think it's like an au poivre burger, basically. It's like a pepper crusted burger that you can only get at the bar, and they only make like 15 of them in a day. So it's really hard to, one, get the burger, let alone get a reservation. But of course, when you're willing to drop $10,000 on a spot, you can easily get in. I do recall the last time I was there that their bathroom was upstairs and you had to climb up like a very rickety spiral staircase to get there. So that's also something I don't like. I'm very, very particular about the bathrooms in the establishments I go to. But basically, they were at this dinner and this new recruit was talking with Will and John about what they, are doing as a company. And they were talking about how he's going to be using this website called Hashcat, which I guess is a password cracking program that people use to steal cryptocurrency from other people. And so this new person said, hey, like the moment I saw that they were using this, I knew something was up, because 9 times out of 10, if anybody is using Hashcat, they are using it for nefarious reasons. So long story short, he didn't end up accepting this job because basically the guys told him that he needed to give up all of his passwords so that they could work together. He obviously is like, no, bad vibes, and he could tell that they were shady. So let's move the story on to April 2025 with Michael, who is our Italian crypto trader who had been in contact with the boys through various business dealings. And supposedly the two boys reached out to Michael saying, we want you to become more macho, like us two fucking limp dick losers, wearing our military costumes so we feel like we're big and strong and doing something important. And I guess Michael, grew up in a sheltered area in a small town in Italy, so like he knew nothing about American military aggression. And he had said he felt very unprepared for the dangers of crypto's increasingly violent landscape. So this Michael guy had about $30 million in crypto in his bank account. He needed to hand over all of his devices, etc., if he wanted to move into the house with the guys to become more macho. So he didn't give them everything upon moving into the house. He moves in and, and immediately he's like, oh, good times, good fun. And it seems like the guys are kind of hazing him a little bit, like a fraternity would be. Granted, John and Will are like 33 and 37, so it's really fucking embarrassing. College is long gone for both of you. And so basically they gave him a large room on the ground floor with an ensuite bathroom. How kind. Supposedly the guys, were, being funny, hazing. It's all in good fun. They called Michael Hogleg, inspired by the size of his penis. Love that nickname. And I have a feeling those two small fucking dick losers were definitely intimidated by Michael's Italian stallion in his pants. They humiliated him in many different ways. They put him in outfits, including dresses and a collar from Agent Provocateur, which is a very high-end lingerie brand for women. They would also force him to wear tiny shorts, crop tops, and a lampshade on his head. They also put him in a Bucky's Beaver costume at one point, and another moment they had put him in a cage in the kitchen, and one of the girls who worked at Brandy Melville at one point asked Michael, why are you doing this? Why are you putting up with this? And he said, this is just going to make me stronger. They also hazed him by forcing him to drink at parties, do push-ups in front of people. They made him carry rugs up and down the street as like physical torture. And they made the guy play Edward 40 Hands. Again, you guys are 33 and 37. You're forcing this Italian kid to tape 2 40s of malt liquor onto his hands and drink them both. Real cool guys. Real cool guys. And as I've mentioned, they've all been drugged out this entire time. They're all high on cocaine, as well as doing crack, which I guess Michael and Will cooked in an air fryer. I knew air fryers had a lot of capabilities, but I did not know you can cook crack in it. While they were cracked out and on coke, they were also being sexual deviants, hosting a lot of orgies, and engaging in BDSM sex at the time. So, of course, Michael was continuing to hold on to his passwords, but as time went by, the guys started getting a little antsy, and they started talking and basically saying, like, okay, you're actually now a terrorist because you're not giving in to us. So you kind of see the tides are turning a little bit. Of course, the hazing is, like, not good, but we'll get into the very, very worse actions that they were doing towards him as time went on. So as they were trying to get access to his cryptocurrency, they were getting more and more upset at the fact that he wasn't willing to give it up. So I guess they find out that he had more physical crypto wallets back in Italy. So the guys ended up sending him back to Italy, and they made him wear an AirTag throughout his entire trip to make sure that they always knew about his whereabouts. So he ended up returning the first week of May 3rd, and John and Will ended up stealing his passport, and at this point, he was now held captive under John and Will's house arrest, or whatever you want to call it. So at this point, the hazing and torture really was ramped up in hopes of kind of breaking this man down to nothing, so he would give up their passwords and then they could steal his money, because again, they are just fighting terrorism. Their forms of torture were coming in lots of different ways. They would make custom tank tops with pictures of Michael smoking a crack pipe. I do want to see that, and I wouldn't hate to get my hands on one of those shirts. I do hate tank tops though, but that's besides the point. They cut his leg with a chainsaw at one point, and they ended up cauterizing that wound with an open flame. They ended up holding him upside down by his ankles over the edge of a staircase that were 4 floors up. He would have fallen to likely his death onto wood floors, so ouch. They held a gun to his head, which they have photographic evidence of. He was bound and tied up with electrical cords and subsequently pistol whipped. They also submerged Michael's feet in water and used a taser to jolt him with electricity to try to electrocute him again into giving up these passwords. At one point, they were so desperate they ended up peeing on him, as well as forcing him to smoke crack cocaine and threatening to kill his family. This is a doozy, guys. When I was doing the research for this, I was like, whoa, this is a lot. And then this morning I ended up going through and like organizing all my notes to keep it concise. And I was even reading it then and I was like, holy shit. And now reading back it's just like so depressing. People are fucking terrifying. I'm scared. But let's fast forward quickly to May 22nd. So this is the 16th day that Michael has been held captive by these guys. This was John's birthday. He had a China-themed birthday party, giving his long-standing obsession with the country. That night, everybody wore kimonos, rice patty hats, and headed to dinner at NYC hotspot Sartiano's. Will happened to be in the Hamptons that weekend, so he wasn't there for all of the drama to unfold. But you gotta think he might have had a lot of, great additional insights towards the China party, given his time spent at the bike factory in China way back when. So they all went to dinner at this fabulous restaurant. Then the group went to Little Sister, which is a club in the East Village. And I guess John's credit card was declined at this point, which was not good, and that set him off. Then at 4 a.m. when all the bars closed, they went back to the house and a group was there. He was completely belligerent, stomping around the top floor and ranting incoherently. I guess he had smashed a vase against the wall. And one of the ladies who had been there, who was friends with Charlie from Next Gen, ended up calling him to say she was so afraid and that she was needing to hide. And she mentioned that John was completely out of control. And it kind of sounds like Charlie's like a bit of the pimp. Like, oh, let me call my pimp and tell him I'm in danger. So again, this is at 4 a.m. when all of this is happening. And a few hours later, just after 9:30 a.m., we see that Michael dashes out of the house through the basement. There is security footage from another townhouse on that street that showed Michael in a 2-piece black set. He was completely barefoot. He was bleeding from his head, and he just had a laptop with him, which likely is where he was keeping some of his crypto wallets. So supposedly, Michael and John at this point were fighting that morning again about the passwords. I guess there were some issues, with John's girlfriend at the time, and Michael was getting involved, supposedly. Again, they're all on drugs, so they're all paranoid, they're all amped up, they're all psycho and seeing double and triple, and it's just a hot fucking mess. So I guess it seems like Michael agreed to give over the password, but he needed to go downstairs and get something before he could really give up everything to John. And at this point, he raced out of the basement with his computer in tow, and he ends up running into a traffic enforcement officer on this corner of Mulberry, who actually ends up calling the cops, who begin to unravel what the fuck is happening. So honestly, it was really smart of Michael to be able to do this. One, when Will wasn't at the house because he was in the Hamptons, like I mentioned. So he wasn't here for this entire situation. And John was also probably strung the fuck out on drugs, exhausted. It's 9:30 a.m. God knows they were still fucking partying. Cocaine takes a very long time to wear off. So if you're going and you keep having more blow, the night will not end. You will be doing it till you see the sunrise. And he was definitely belligerent and obviously not fully on his toes. So this is a perfect time for Michael to run out of the house to safety. So a few hours later, the cops storm the townhouse and remove John from the house. He's wearing a bathrobe and no shoes. He was really shocked that they were there. When John was put into custody, he tells the cops, I was sleeping, bro. I had no idea what was going on. Yeah, no, we know. This is the wild moment when Charlie from Next Gen NYC arrives just in time to see John emerging from the front door, handcuffed and in his white bathrobe. And you literally can find the footage online where you just see Charlie standing around watching John be patted down by the cops. It was crazy. He immediately ends up ratting out Will, and now the cops, can't really get to him immediately because he's in the Hamptons. Once the cops get in contact with Will, he basically starts negotiating his own surrender to the police. But he still partied all weekend because it is Memorial Day weekend. He ended up turning himself in on the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend. He was like, babe, it's a holiday weekend. I need my Monday off. On Tuesday, I will stroll right into the frickin' federal prison. No big deal. But don't ruin my long weekend with an arrest. So I meant to also mention that once Michael was picked up from the scene, the authorities ended up taking him to Bellevue Hospital, where he was in stable condition. And unfortunately, I haven't really been able to find any new updates on his whereabouts. And also, I can't even find a picture of his face. In all of the videos I found of him, he has his face blurred. Again, he's a security risk, so it's not really safe to keep his information and blast his face out on the internet. But not much information can be found on what the hell is going on with Michael post this entire situation. And so obviously, the cops get involved. They completely tear apart the townhouse. And they come across Polaroids with the chainsaw being held against Michael's legs. They see that picture of a loaded gun being put up to his head as well. They find tarps and buckets and goggles and a hacksaw, which Michael said that the boys had threatened to use for disposing his dead body. In the townhouse, they also found 5 guns, as well as more than 2,000 rounds of ammunition. And so as of June 11th, Will and John are both being arraigned on charges of first-degree kidnapping, a crime that will carry up to a life sentence in prison, as well as assault, coercion, attempted grand larceny, and criminal possession of a weapon. I feel like they should be charged more. I want them both to rot in fucking hell. But from the defense, these are the lawyers defending Will and John. They basically said that Michael has completely exaggerated the situation. He said he couldn't have been kidnapped because he has free will and he could come and go as he pleases. He said it's interesting because a lot of the videos that you see of Michael along with other people partying, he's all smiles. They have photos of him smiling while wearing a neck collar and a woman kind of walking him around like a dog on a leash. But hello, yeah, doing drugs and partying with hot girls is fun, regardless. But once you start fucking taking a chainsaw to your leg and begging for the crypto passwords, that's when all the fun and games is over. And we can't forget that Stockholm syndrome is very much a real thing where you start to fall for your captors and you become kind of indebted to this person even though they are treating you poorly. The boundaries get very blurred in those types of situations where somebody is clearly in control of the situation and somebody is clearly the victim. They were also saying that some of the weird, terrifying things that the police found after they raided the house, including cattle prods, cage, a wheelchair, crack, naturally, loaded guns, threatening Polaroids, chainsaws, blood, corpse disposal implements, fake legal documents, crypto theft manifestos, etc., were just some harebrained pranks. It was just some kooky guys pranking Michael because he signed up for this, right? Until evidently, one night it all had gone too far. And now Michael is like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, it was just some harebrained pranks until it all goes a little too far. They're just kooky kids. You can't stop them. Of course, Michael's team is basically saying that, you know, he was only pretending to enjoy himself during that time, that he was having sex, taking drugs, and going to clubs just to placate his captors and so that they wouldn't continue to harass him. They also had some text showing text from an assistant who had described what was happening to Michael as pretty inhumane. They said he was sobbing, hyperventilating, and appearing broken with no more life in his eyes because of the torture that the two of them were inflicting upon him. So as of today, John ended up getting booked into Rikers Island. Naturally, after 2 months behind bars, he was released on house arrest. So he was able to pay $1 million bond. That was a combination between some cash he had as well as property by John's father. And he, of course, had a celebrity bondsman who was a guy named Ira Judelson. And I'm excited to read more about him. He has an AMA on Reddit that I need to dig through, but that's, again, for another show. I'm so tired of talking. Jesus fucking Christ, thank God we're almost done. Will is still at Rikers. Lols. Godspeed. I hope you fucking rot there. So the two of them have both pleaded not guilty to kidnapping charges, and both guys will be scheduled to appear in court on October 15th. So mark your calendars, girlies. There's a lot more to uncover and unpack in this story. But to be honest with you, I think my perspective is that Michael moved in. He was a little bit naive. He's from the small Italian countryside. He makes all this money. You know, he gets a little confused. He gets wrapped up in, you know, a bad news situation with these two dudes. And I feel like it was all fun and games in the beginning. And then as he was holding firm on not sharing his passwords, that's when the torture started. And that's when the problems really began. And John and Will just took advantage of him. And it's so funny that they did it like under the guise of like fighting this digital terrorism that's happening in our country, when it's like actually like, no, you two are just like homegrown fucking American terrorists. Like, you are both pieces of shit who clearly like did not have mommy or daddy love you growing up. Like, nobody said nice things to you growing up, and that's like why you're doing this to others. But this story was just like absolutely crazy. I really do hope these like fucking incel small dick pussies both die in prison. Like, I don't know, I just think you should. And I think they should redistribute that money that John has just into the pockets of some podcasters and the media who have been just absolutely crushing the coverage on this story. It's really crazy. I can't wait for there to be a movie. I mean, who's gonna play Charlie in the movie? TBH, they should just hire Charlie to play it, because nobody can play him. Nobody can get his bitch ass deadpan face and, you know, blank eye stares. Nobody can do that as well as Charlie himself can. So I think that's probably for the best. But I am so exhausted from this episode. This was so much fun. I hope you guys are interested in this type of case and situation. This took me so many hours to fucking research and report on, and now I'm here for over an hour talking. So, you know, Godspeed. This is going to take me forever to edit, but it was so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed all the fun episodes this past week. I started the week off a little soft, but I came back really strong towards the back end. So super proud of that. I hope everybody has a fabulous weekend. So just stay tuned, continue listening to this show, and I so appreciate everybody who's followed me and DMs me and says really kind things, because it's fucking awesome. And I know I'm not just talking to avoid, like I had done for years before people actually started listening to this thing. So I so appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week. New episodes of the I Know You Didn't Ask podcast are out every Monday and Friday, available wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube.